Hello everyone, this is Quakeman. This is a particular topic that I technically didn't really want to make a video on for a lot of personal reasons, but hearing it happen more often, the recent announcement for a particular game which I'll get to, some past conflicts back in August with another game, and the whole discussion that's been going on for the past 3 years since the start of Total Biscuit talking about it, as well as a bunch of other big, channels and people like that on YouTube. And all the different aspects that I think, which are my opinions, I am not saying in any way, shape, or form that I am the right answer here, because everyone's opinions are different. There is no right or wrong answer, just an agreement or disagreement on perspective. And for me, I agree with a lot of the aspects that Total Biscuit says, but there's some aspects that I disagree in different factors from my perspective. But I do understand where it's coming from. So, the whole concept, which obviously the video is obvious, is the idea around pre-orders and just everything else that revolves around it. I don't need to make sub-points based off of that. Just the whole discussion is basically about pre-orders and stuff like that. So, the biggest thing I'll start with, which I know most average person probably already knows this, but some people don't, of the aspect of this. It's something I remembered, and it's something that still is used in some other forms of media, but for video games, it's not done this way anymore. So, what I'm talking about is that the idea of pre-ordering a product was originally because this is what I remember back in the day. I remembered when Halo 2 came out, and there was, and I'm sorry for story time, and there's it was the biggest game ever. It was rated one of the highest. It was one of those console shooters that became uplift for it. Of course, there was another game on the PS2 was first-person shooter that was better. Whatever, that's a side topic. But I remember that I wanted to get Halo 2. But it was difficult for me to find a copy of Halo 2, including Halo 1. Now, obviously, this was 2004, so this was already after a couple years after Halo 1 was out, and Halo 2 was only out for about a couple months or a year or something like that. And I could never find a copy, and then I got lucky because I went to Best Buy, and they had a deal going on to where if you bought an Xbox original, you got access to a wireless controller and a copy of 2 games, which between me and my brother, with some money we had on Christmas, we got an Xbox original with Halo 1 and Halo 2, and that was my first experience with it, and I thought it was very, very enjoyable. But that is the concept that I always remember, was that the reason you wanted a pre-order is that if a game was very, very successful, very popular between everyone across the world, that was the thing I noticed. Which was, you pre-order to get your copy, because if you don't, it may be sold out on day of release. It may be sold out within the week. It may be sold out within a month. Because that's how big it was. And this is before the digital age, like Steam and how Xbox Live and PlayStation Network is today, to where you can download stuff and everything like that. So if you wanted to play a game, you had to find a copy of it. And finding a copy of it was very difficult back then. But now we're in the digital age. Now we're at the point where you can have access to a game right off the bat without any problem and without any worry. So the concept of pre-order kind of diminished from that point. And the only reason pre-order became a huge margin was when they started doing more digital content, which is something that I disagree in a certain regard, in certain aspects, in my opinion, but it all depends on what they're trying to push or whatever like that. But I will say that pre-order today, there really is no reason to pre-order a standard copy of a game, no matter whatever bonus they give you, especially because some of those bonuses can be completely wrong for a consumer, because it almost makes you have to pre-order something, which I get. Everyone says that there is, it's not like you have to spend extra money on pre-ordering. You're putting money down. It's the same price of $60 plus tax, US-wise. And that's true. I mean, it does cost no extra money to pre-order a copy of a game, and you get an extra bonus pretty much for free. But the problem is that a lot of those times, those bonuses can be very wrong to most people. You know, like for myself, at the moment, time of recording, I'm not trying to bitch or complain about this aspect. At this moment, I had a life situation that happened. I'm currently out of a job. I am looking for a job. I cannot pre-order any of the games that are coming. Well, I wouldn't really much, but I cannot access certain games that are being out right now. What if, okay, I'm just giving an example. People know me as the id Software fanatic. I'm excited for the new Doom. Okay? Let's say new Doom released a pre-order bonus to have access to something that every Doom fan should have. But because I currently don't have a job, I can't pre-order it, which means I'm SOL on that factor. And so now all the other people have this thing that I would love to have, but I can't have it because it was only a pre-order bonus. That's the problem. That should not happen. Now, certain cosmetic aspects I can understand. This is where I can kind of understand this sort of pre-order for the people who are very dedicated to a franchise. For example, Gears of War. If I remember correctly, Gears of War 2 and 3 did this, to where if you pre-ordered the game, you got access to a gold Lancer and a gold Hammerburst, which does nothing to the game, except for a cosmetic little coin basically saying that you pre-ordered the game because you were a very big fan. And that makes sense because it was the sequel. It's the second and the third game. So it made sense at that point as for sequels to games and a franchise that has grown from it to have some sort of pre-order bonuses like that, because anyone who loves a franchise, regardless of anyone disagrees with the game, fans can at least feel like that they're given something beneficial for something they love. And I think that's fair. I think that's perfectly fine for something like that. But if you do something like Resident Evil 6, where pre-order at Best Buy, get this map for Mercenaries, pre-order at GameStop, get this map, pre-order from Amazon, get this map. So you have 3 Mercenary maps, which I get, no one really cares much about Mercenaries in 6. I didn't like it that much. But the fact that you have 3 maps completely separated from the main game, which I actually have no idea if they ever released it for public, either for free or for like $5. I hope it was cheap. But that is one of those examples of why pre-order bonuses are just a bit out of whack. And then there's, Far Cry 4 with the harpoon gun and stuff like that. Now, I don't mind if pre-order bonuses give you access to a particular weapon that may take a while to unlock in the first place. But if it's a weapon that wasn't in the original game and only people who pre-order have access to it, I see a problem there. That should not happen because you're ruining different game experiences. Now, I know that was a wrong sort of discussion for 8 minutes, basically. But where I'm getting at is the first thing I want to start on is a series that I really love. And I took a lot of appreciation when they brought it back by a different studio, basically 10 years later, was Deus Ex Human Revolution. This is a game that I definitely still recommend people play. The director's cut is on Steam, as well as on the current, the last-gen consoles, the 360 and PS3. Now, when Mankind Divided was announced, I was fucking excited, because I could not wait to see what they were able to do. What could they fix from the last game that were not as fun as features, which they kind of did fix in director's cut version of Human Revolution. But I was curious how much further they can do. What can they add to the game to make it feel like a Deus Ex game still with some of its gameplay mechanics and continue the story right after that? Which was, in my opinion, difficult to do because of the 4 choices you could do at the end of the game, which I won't spoil. So I was curious of what this ending, what one of those ending carries over to this. So I was excited. They showed off the mechanics. They showed like 20 minutes of gameplay from E3, and they have a lot of good stuff that I'm excited for, and I cannot wait for release. Then they did something that I am not going to touch. I don't care how much it may kill me in the future, because I have to follow through on something like this if I want to preach this as well as anyone else. But the company who is releasing the game did the pre-order bonus releasement, but it uses a system that I absolutely think is the worst example to ever use. Steam first did it, and I still do not like the aspect of it. And that is a tier pre-order system. But it's not just that. It's the fact that you can only choose one of each tier of different I can't even say the word today, brain. But you know the word I'm trying to say. Basically, the whole system is like this. You pre-order, and within each of the tier, you choose one option. Now, I don't remember it from full view, but like one of them was where you get to choose either the classic coat and look from Human Revolution or two other aspects that are different cosmetics, which again are cosmetics. So really, in my opinion, I feel that's nothing too much, but still that can be a problem. Then there's one where you choose between a digital art book and I forget the other one, but it's like some digital page book or something. But basically, you can only choose between one or two. Then another one is where you get access to an extra secret mission or something, which is already considered, in most people's eyes, as cut content. I forget what fourth tier is supposed to be. And the last tier, which again, based on what I've looked at, it's really difficult to figure out exactly what they're trying to propose. I feel it's only available for people who pre-ordered, but everyone is telling me that, oh, no, it's for everyone. Which I find that difficult to that they would do that, but we'll see. But basically, the last tier is the game gets out 4 days early, and the game's coming out in I think like February or March of 2016. So that's the system, and the only way to unlock these tiers is as if more people pre-order, and this is going to cause a problem. And I noticed this right off the bat when I saw it happen. With Steam, and I won't lie that I ran into that problem, and that's where I learned why it was a freaking problem. Which is, oh look, a game I want to pre-purchased. I pre-purchased. Let's look at the rewards. Oh, a free soundtrack after Tier 1. Oh, this after Tier 2. Oh, a free game at Tier 3. Well, now I want to start glamoring at people saying, pre-order this so we can get a free game. Come on, please pre-order this for me, come on. And if it doesn't happen, I'm like, you all fucking suck. How dare you? You ruined it. That's what's going to happen here. And it's even worse because not only are we going to have those people complaining because no one pre-ordered enough, but then we also have restricted content, even though some of it is cosmetic, although one of the two things there, it seems to be not actual gameplay changing, which is like I think an old revolver returns and the extra mission. So if no one pre-order, like if we all preach the whole thing of not pre-ordering, which is what I'm going to do, I'm going to wait until the game gets released and then I'm going to pick it up the day of release, not pre-order. If everyone preaches this, then we're not going to see any of those tiers unlocked, and then the people who did pre-order are going to fucking complain like it's our fault when they don't see the problem. And this is not right. This is wrong to a millionth degree. And it should not happen. And definitely we need to try and preach the living other shit after not having this happen and try to tell these companies that we should not see this happen. Now, I thought the tier system was going to disappear completely through Steam, but the recent, I think it's a new Tales game that's being released on Steam has the tier system. And I'm kind of like, why is this returning? Because I thought it happened back in like 2011 or 2012, and I thought it went away after no one cared for it. But apparently, no, it returned. So there's that. So that's one of the biggest examples why printing needs to be stopped, and we need to stop trying to preach this and start getting people not to do it. Now, the difficult part, and this is where I have a major disagreement on Total Biscuit on this, and it's hard for me because I know I sound hypocritical when I say this. I don't mind the idea of pre-ordering when it comes to collector's edition, because I've purchased some collector's edition, and you should know that, because I've done the Defiance collector's edition unboxing before, and I still like the game. Out of all the things I've pre-ordered, I think, 3 collector's edition aspects. Defiance Ultimate Collector's Edition, Resident Evil 5 Collector's Edition, Operation Raccoon City's Collector's Edition, and I think that's all I got. Because I know I missed out on the DJ Hero 2 one. But those are the ones that I picked up on. And all of those, actually, besides Defiance, were pretty much franchise that I already knew that I was going to like. Defiance was something that I really wanted to put my investment in because I've already tested the game, And the game was exactly what I expected. Granted, there was a lot of lacking content. It's not an amazing game. You know, it did go free to play, but they still are putting a lot of work into it, the same way they've been doing with Rift, Trion World's other MMO game that they released. But that's just my opinion. I'm not recommending anyone to play Defiance unless you feel it's okay. I still thought it was an okay game, and I was perfectly fine for the $150 for personal reasons. But when it comes to Collector's Edition, in my opinion, and most people may disagree with this, the only reason I ever feel that a Collector's Edition is worth purchasing is if it includes something memorabilia that is physical. Always. Now, I know most people always say, oh, why would you buy something that's going to stay on your desk forever? I'm like, why would you buy anything that will stay on your desk forever? Because I've seen that happen constantly with stuff that's not even video games. So I don't mind having things like I have the Hellbug statue that's still out here. I used to have the Chris figurine from Resident Evil 5, and that got destroyed. I still have the Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City patches that it came with. And I like those. I like memorabilia like that because it makes me feel proud that I got a game. Even though Operation Raccoon City sucked. And I agree with that. I'm still happy that I got it. You know? I still am fine with it. And the game kind of flopped anyways, but that's a side project. So that's what I was talking about, is that, you know, a physical memorabilia is something I always feel that should be there. You know, Halo 3 had the helmet that, even though it wasn't an actual helmet you could wear that some people didn't like, it was still something that was pretty cool to have. You know, it just means that you have dedication to a franchise or a product, or you have trust within a developer if you have that trust to do so. Now, I get Total Biscuit is going to completely disagree by saying that, you know, you are pre-ordering a product that you have no idea that it's going to be good or not. You have no idea if what they're promising. And in today's standards, I understand that. My opinions about Collector's Edition today is very different than how it was in the past. Because in the past, I was perfectly fine at pre-ordering Collector's Edition like BioShock or Fallout 3. Because we never had that situation of being lied to as bad as we did with other games, you know. In my opinion, I feel that Destiny was one of those examples of something that we were lied to in terms of what we were going to be getting, which I'll get to that in a moment with Taken King. While, you know, the biggest example was Watch Dogs, you know, and there is a discussion that people have said that is absolutely true, that, you know, Watch Dogs probably would have been very successful and probably wouldn't have been bitched at a lot if they didn't show us how the game was going to be like and how the game actually turned out to be like, and a bunch of other crap that happened with the PC version. And then the other example is obviously Unity, Assassin's Creed Unity. And that is true. Like, if you give us a high standards of something and then low par it, of course people are going to feel the game is not that great and it's shitty or something, when the game honestly is not that bad. I'm not a fan of its mechanic system, but it's something they probably could improve on later down the road. And then there's the whole discussion that the reason why Watch Dogs was gimped was so they can make the sequel better, which is a discussion I've heard, and that's difficult to prove or disprove, so I can't say anything. But back then I was fine with the whole idea of Collector's Edition. Nowadays, I would say try your best to understand what you're going for, and most of the time still don't pre-order. If the pre-order of the Collector's Edition is nothing but digital memorabilia, a lot of the times I would say don't ever touch it. Because that just seems so pointless to do so. Even if it's non-gaming content, like an extra gun that could be more damaging or whatever, or like the harpoon gun that was in Far Cry 4, then, you know, I guess. But most of the time, Collector's Edition lately has been nothing but in-game content because I guess they feel no one cares about it, which I disagree in my opinion. I mean, heck, even though the game sucked, but Duke Nukem Forever as a Collector's Edition was still pretty cool to have all of it. It was crazy, but it was still pretty cool. Fallout New Vegas, if I remember correctly, had a freaking poker chips and a deck of cards, which me, who loves deck of cards, would have loved to have that in my collection. But, you know, I'll never have it, and that's fine. The list goes on. But that's just the only time I always feel okay at pre-ordering stuff, and I'm always selective on how I do so. Because I've only pre-ordered 5 things in my life. 2 of which were Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3. But that's the other aspect I want to get into, but I'm not saying this as being the case to pre-order everything, because right now we are losing so much trust that I would say that pre-ordering should be absolutely, just don't do it. I mean, again, back in like 2012, 2011, it wasn't that big of a deal. We weren't seeing too many bad situations. They were all pretty much fair play. But now it's not good. We've had, again, lied to products, not products that they should be at the par they should be. And because of pre-ordering, they got hyped up too big. You know, and that's the other problem, is hype in the pre-order aspect of it. And, you know, all these other perspectives, you know. I'm starting to die down on my discussion, it seems like. But that's just how I feel about it, about the whole pre-order aspect. I don't mind doing it for collector's editions. However, lately I've been very selective and down on the idea, because most collector's edition has never interested me. Some have been pretty good. Now, I will say that if collector's editions are still going to be a thing, I'm going to look to Bethesda on how they did one of their collector's editions, actually. Now, most people may disagree with this, because when it was announced, everyone was really pissed about what this was, because there was a tagline that was listed here that everyone was like, "The fuck?" In my opinion, I thought this is the smartest thing they've ever done, and it actually would downgrade on the idea of pre-orders pretty heavily. So when Wolfenstein: A New Order was being released, they finally announced their collector's edition. And I was excited, but then sad, because I didn't have the money to get it. But when I looked at it, I saw that it was kind of cheap. It was like $80. I was like, really? $80? Usually collector's editions with that, because it had like postcards, a box, a leather, these dog tags that were like using leather or something like that. It had a statue of the Panzerhound, which was really cool looking, and some other aspects that I kind of forget at this moment. It had all this stuff that I thought it would have cost freaking like $160 or something like that. But then I saw why it cost so little. This collector's edition did not include a copy of the game. You had to buy that separately, which everyone flipped out. But in my opinion, I agree with this. This makes it so people can still buy the standard version at the store. It's not limited supply. Anyone can get the collector's edition without a problem, which I think is pretty cool. And then you can only access it through Bethesda's store on their website, or its store on the website. That's the only way you can get this, which means it's not restricted to GameStop exclusive or whatever. And the only pre-order bonus that I saw with a New Order was the Doom Beta aspect. But even if you didn't pre-order it, you still can kind of have access to the Doom Beta last time I checked. However, I think there's a time code between the two. Besides that, that was pretty much the only thing that I thought was perfectly fine. And I love this idea, and I think that more companies should do this practice. The idea of making the collector's edition available on their front page does not include the copy of the game, so that's easier to produce and deal with instead of always having a copy of the game and having this limited situation. Because the people who would be able to want it can get it later instead of being freaked out when they have to buy it now before it's too late type of attitude. And I think that's perfectly fine. I think that's where collector's edition should start going with video games, is having a separate purchase, so people aren't pressured into buying something they shouldn't be getting only because there was digital items. Because to my knowledge, nothing in the pre-order of Wolfenstein New Order had nothing digital for the game. It was all strictly just cosmetical stuff outside the game, or a Doom Beta. And I think that's the perfect idea right there. That is what I would love to see more often, you know, because that can limit pre-orders pretty well, and hopefully we can start seeing more pre-orders drop, because one example of the problem, and I've been seeing a lot of things about this, was that with Destiny. Was that Destiny had so much of a budget for its marketing and was blown out of proportion because of the Bungie logo, that everyone jumped on it immediately because they were expecting something amazing from Bungie. I was skeptical. And the reason I was skeptical was because a lot of the stuff that they were showing wasn't really interesting to me. You know, I was hoping that they would, you know, it's fine if they took pieces from other games to make their own game, but at least do enough to make it feel like it's a completely different sort of experience. But the problem I felt is it felt like Halo and Borderlands had a baby with World of Warcraft. That's really what it felt like, and it lacked a story. And now they just finally update the game with Taken King coming out. They're finally doing crap to the game to actually make it feel like an actual game with story. But the problem is a lot of people who were year ones feel like they were cheated on. They feel like they were, they wasted their money on stuff on a beta. And that technically I feel it is, based on what I've seen. Is it seems like everything about Destiny was a beta until now. It seems like, now it seems like it's Destiny 1.0.0. And that's really sad to hear something like that from a game like that, And then there's the whole thing with the music producer who got fired, which he won his case, thank goodness, in that situation. So there's a lot of things to say about this. The thing is that when it comes to Preorder, I would say we do need to stop as a whole community as best as we can, or at least limit the numbers just enough to make the publishers listen. We need to stop pre-ordering things like crazy, I can understand pre-ordering series and franchises that people are knowing that they should be excited about regardless. And usually, I haven't seen much disappointment with those games. I mean, I'm a Resident Evil fan as well. Operation Raccoon City was the only one that really disappointed me like mad in recent times. Because 5... I loved it. Even though I had a problem with a couple aspects, I still loved it. And 6, I get complaints, but I still thought 6 was still pretty much a good game. It doesn't compare to the past games, and I'm happy they're remastering 0, and they already released the first one, and I can't wait for the 2 one. So, when it comes to a aspiring franchise that we know, usually it makes sense. However, I should say as consumers, we should try to push more information on people, and we should try to have more people understand stuff. We should understand, do not always take things at name value, always do research first. Look at the developers. What's their history as a developer? Can you trust them? This is a good example when Silent Hill Homecoming came out, and as well as Silent Hill Downpour. Those two things were pretty atrocious. Now, I kind of enjoyed Homecoming. So there's that. You want to understand that just because it has the name or the publisher's name, that doesn't always mean that the game should always be good. Always do research on the developers that made the game, Now, granted, Wolfenstein New Order was actually awesome to me, and I trust it. I loved it. I thought it was an amazing game that I was very surprised that they handled it, But I was skeptical. I was not going to jump on that shit immediately because of it. It was a developer I've never heard of. It's not its software, and I've trusted past non-id software games before, like Quake 4 and Return Castle Wolfenstein, but this one I was a bit concerned. But my trust was broken. My trust was gained when I saw how well they did the game, and Old Blood was even good. So there's that aspect as well. But we should always be aware of what games are being made than just names. We should understand the people involved too. And that's difficult when not everyone's going to memorize every person's name in the industry, and I get that. But you should always do more research before you put money down. And then consumers should also understand the risk being involved when you do so. That's just how I feel. I will say the last 2 years we've had big mistakes in the industry, and we need to be very, very vocal about this aspect to get some changes around. We need to vote with our wallet, which is a good sort of spiel that almost everyone has talked about. I think Total Biscuit has said it, as well as Jim Sterling. So, we really need to stop doing certain aspects just because it's going to keep continuing, There's some practices that I'm kind of mildly okay, but I know it can turn it for the worse in the future depending on how it works. But a lot of the times we've seen mistakes after mistakes, burn after burn. And I feel that we need to work together as a gaming community to try and shift that, because it's not just the developers that makes these games, it's the community that grows these games. That's why certain games have a cult following. These games don't just get popular because the developers made them popular. We did. We're the ones that enjoyed it and had the experience to do so, regardless of how old they were. And that's something that needs to still circulating in that aspect. I've gone way too long. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I went on tangents and stupidity at time and time. I know everyone's going to disagree and call me a hypocrite in some aspects in this, but that's fine. Just has some general thought. I'm not wrong or right on this aspect. It's my perspective and my thought. You guys have a great day. Take care.